I hit my husband for having the audacity to bring up the neglect I showed our own son. He has not spoken a word of love to me since, is slowly walking away from everything we built over 22 years, and the only thing standing between us is the truth I refuse to face. My husband said good morning to me yesterday. Just those 2 words. Good morning. No honey. No babe. No smile. No hand on my shoulder as he passed the coffee maker. Just good morning. The way you greet a coworker you don't particularly like but have to share a break room with. That's what I am now. A coworker. In my own marriage. In the house we bought together 20 years ago. Where we raised a son. Where we built 22 years of something I thought was permanent. And I'm standing in my kitchen at 6 a.m. realizing that the man who used to kiss my forehead every morning now says good morning the way you say excuse me to a stranger on a bus. I did this. I need to say that before I tell you what happened. Because I've spent 8 months telling everyone else a different version. The version where my husband suddenly changed. The version where he got cold and distant for no reason. The version where I'm the confused wife wondering what went wrong. That version is a lie. I know exactly what went wrong. I hit him. I hit my husband. Across the face. In our kitchen. Because he said something true about me that I wasn't ready to hear. And he hasn't loved me the same way since. He hasn't loved me at all. Let me go back. My name is Vivian. I'm 47. My husband Philip is 49. We've been married 22 years. We have 1 son. Theo. He's 20. He's in college 3 states away, and he chose that school specifically because it was 3 states away from me. I didn't understand why at the time. I understand now. Philip is the kind of man that people describe in 3 words. Solid. Quiet. Reliable. He's a civil engineer. He builds things that hold weight. Bridges. Foundations. Retaining walls. I used to find that poetic. A man who builds things that hold weight married to a woman who... Well, let me keep going. Philip and I met at 25. Married at 27. Theo came at 29. Normal timeline. Normal life. Philip worked. I worked. I was in hospital administration. We split duties. He cooked 3 nights a week. I cooked 3. We ordered in on Fridays. Routine. Steady. The kind of marriage that doesn't make for exciting stories because nothing dramatic ever happens. Except I made something dramatic happen. Slowly. Over years. Without realizing what I was building. Or actually, without admitting what I was building. Theo was a sensitive kid. From the start. He cried easily. He felt things deeply. Loud noises scared him. New environments made him anxious. He'd rather sit in a corner with a coloring book than play with other kids at a party. He was quiet. Observant. Careful with his words the way some children are careful with their hands. Philip understood Theo. Immediately. Intuitively. Because Philip was the same kind of kid. He told me once, I was Theo. Quiet. Anxious. Afraid of getting things wrong. My dad pushed me and it made it worse. I don't want to do that to him. Philip was patient with Theo. He sat on the floor with him. He talked to him in low voices. He never raised his voice. Never rushed him. When Theo was afraid of the dark, Philip didn't say, there's nothing to be afraid of. He said, tell me what the dark feels like to you. And he listened. And then they got a nightlight together. A dinosaur one. Green. Theo picked it out. I didn't do any of that. I want to be clear about what I'm admitting here. I didn't hurt my son. I didn't scream at him. I didn't call him names. I didn't hit him. What I did was worse in a way that took me 20 years to understand. I withdrew. Theo needed patience and I gave him efficiency. He needed softness and I gave him schedules. He needed a mother who sat on the floor and I gave him a mother who stood in the doorway and said, come on. Let's go. We're late. When Theo cried I said, you're fine. When he was scared I said, there's nothing to be scared of. When he didn't want to go to a birthday party I said, you're going. It's good for you. When he wanted to show me a drawing I said, that's great honey. Put it on the fridge. Without looking up from my phone. I didn't mean to be cold. I wasn't cold with everyone. I was warm with Philip. Warm with friends. Warm with my coworkers and my sister and the women in my book club. But with Theo I couldn't find it. The warmth. It's like there was a door between me and my son and I could see him through the glass but I couldn't figure out how to open it. And instead of trying harder I just stood on my side and waited for him to come to me. He never came. Because children don't come to people who make them feel like an inconvenience. They come to people who make them feel wanted. And Philip made Theo feel wanted. I made Theo feel managed. The small things. The things I told myself didn't matter but did. Theo was 7. School play. He was a tree. One line. The tree says, the forest remembers. He practiced that line for 2 weeks. Every night. In the mirror. Philip watched every practice run and said, "You're going to be great, buddy." The night of the play I was late. Work meeting ran over. I got there during the second act. Theo's part was in the first act. I missed it. Philip's face when I sat down. Not angry. Disappointed. He said, he looked for you. In the audience. Before his line. He looked for you and you weren't there. I said, I couldn't help it. Work. Philip said, Vivian. He's 7. He had one line. He'll remember who was there and who wasn't. I said, he's 7. He'll forget by next week. Philip looked at the stage. He said, no he won't. He didn't forget. 20 years later in therapy Theo brought up the school play. I know because Philip told me. Not to hurt me. Because he wanted me to understand the weight of what I thought was small. Theo was 10. He won a reading competition at school. Came home with a certificate and a trophy. Small trophy. Plastic. Gold paint. He ran through the front door and said, Mom, I won. I was on a phone call. Work again. I held up one finger. The weight finger. He stood there holding his trophy while I finished a conversation about a budget report. When I hung up I said, that's great, sweetheart. What did you win? He said, reading competition. I read the most books in my grade. I said, good job. And I went to the kitchen to start dinner. Philip was sitting at the table. He'd been watching. He said, Vivian. He won a reading competition. Can you look at the trophy? I said, I saw it. I said, good job. Philip said, you said good job while walking away. He's still standing by the door. I turned around. Theo was still there. Trophy in his hand. Waiting. For something I hadn't given him. Attention. Real attention. The kind where you stop what you're doing and look at your child and let them feel like the center of the world for 60 seconds. I walked over. I said, show me. He showed me. I said, that's amazing. I'm proud of you. But it was late. He could feel the difference between the real thing and the performance of the real thing. Children always can. Theo was 13. He asked me to read a book he liked. A fantasy novel. He said, Mom, I think you'd really like it. Can you read it so we can talk about it? I said, sure. I put it on my nightstand. It sat there for 4 months. He asked me twice if I'd started it. I said, not yet. Busy. I never read it. Philip read it. In 3 days. He and Theo talked about it for a week. I heard them in the living room. Laughing. Discussing characters. Theories about the sequel. I heard my son animated and happy and engaged and I was not part of it. Not because I wasn't invited. Because I didn't bother to read 300 pages. Theo was 15. He started pulling away from me. Not dramatically. Gradually. The way a river changes course over time. You don't notice until the water isn't where it used to be. He stopped telling me about school. Stopped asking me to come to events. Stopped sharing things. When I asked how his day was he said, fine. When I asked if anything was new he said, not really. I told Philip, Theo is being distant. Philip said, he's not being distant. He's protecting himself. I said, from what? Philip looked at me for a long time. He said, Vivian. Think about it. I didn't think about it. I filed it under teenager stuff and moved on. Theo was 17. Junior year. He wrote an essay for English class. The prompt was, write about a person who influenced you most. He wrote about Philip. The teacher shared it at parent-teacher night. Philip and I both read it. The essay described a man who sat on floors. Who talked in low voices. Who listened to what the dark felt like. Who read a book in 3 days so he could talk to his son about it. Who never once said you're fine when his son said he was scared. Who showed up to every play and every game and every concert 20 minutes early so he'd be in the front row. The essay was about Philip. Only Philip. I wasn't mentioned. Not once. In 800 words about the person who influenced him most his mother did not appear. I said to Philip in the car, he didn't mention me. Philip was quiet. Then he said, I know. I said, should I be worried? Philip said, Vivian. You should have been worried a long time ago. I didn't pursue it. I should have. I should have sat down with Theo that night and said, I read your essay. I noticed I wasn't in it. Can we talk about why? That would have been the door opening. The beginning of repair. But I didn't open it because opening it meant hearing something I wasn't ready to hear. Theo was 18. He applied to 6 colleges. The farthest one was 900 miles away. He got into all 6. He chose the farthest one. Philip told me later that Theo told him why. He said, "Dad, I love Mom. But I need to be somewhere where the distance isn't my fault. At home the distance is in the same room. At least if I'm 900 miles away there's a reason for it. The distance isn't my fault." My son needed to be 900 miles away so the emotional distance he felt from his mother could finally have a geographic explanation. Because the emotional distance had no explanation he could understand. He just knew that his father made him feel seen and his mother made him feel tolerated. Theo left for college. The house got quiet. Philip and I settled into the empty nest routine. Dinners alone. TV at night. Weekend errands. Surface conversation. We were fine. I thought we were fine. 8 months ago. A Saturday in October. Philip and I were in the kitchen. He was making coffee. I was going through mail. Normal morning. Philip's phone buzzed. He looked at it. Smiled. I said, "Who's that?" He said, "Theo." I said, "What did he say?" Philip read it to me. It said, "Dad, thanks for the care package. The cookies were perfect. Sarah and I ate the whole tin. Tell Mom I said hi." Tell Mom I said hi. Not, tell Mom thank you. Not, call Mom for me. Tell Mom I said hi. An afterthought. A postscript. A footnote in a message to his real parent. And something in me cracked. Not sadness. Something defensive. Something ugly. The same thing that rose in every mother who sees proof that her child loves someone else more and instead of asking why decides to be angry about it. I said, "He never texts me like that." Philip said, "He texts you." I said, "He texts me back." There's a difference. He initiates with you. He reaches out. He sends you things. He calls you. I get replies. Short ones. That's it. Philip sipped his coffee. He said, "Vivian. Can I say something honest?" I said, "What?" He said, "Theo's relationship with you is a result of how you showed up for him. I'm not saying that to hurt you. I'm saying it because it's true. And I've wanted to say it for 10 years. He's distant with you because you were distant with him first. He doesn't reach out because reaching out to you never felt safe. He learned young that your attention was conditional. That he had to catch you between tasks. That his feelings were inconvenient. And he adapted. He stopped reaching. And now you're upset that he doesn't reach." I felt heat in my chest. Not the productive kind. The defensive kind. The kind that says, "How dare you?" I said, "That's not fair." He said, "Vivian. He wrote an 800-word essay about the person who influenced him most and you weren't in it. That's not a teenager being dramatic. That's a child telling you the truth on paper because he couldn't tell you to your face." I said, "So it's my fault? Is that what you're saying? That my son doesn't love me because I'm a bad mother?" Philip said, "He loves you. He just doesn't feel loved by you. There's a difference. And I think if you're honest with yourself you know that. You know you pulled back from him. You know you made him feel like he was on your schedule instead of in your heart. You know you missed things. Not because of work. Because showing up for Theo required something you didn't want to give. Patience. Softness. Sitting on a floor. Reading a book you weren't interested in. Being bored with a 7-year-old story because being bored with your child is part of loving them. I said, "Stop." He said, "You missed his play. You walked away from his trophy. You never read the book. You." I hit him. Open hand. Across the left side of his face. Hard enough that his head turned. Hard enough that the sound filled the kitchen. Hard enough that the coffee in his hand sloshed over the edge of the mug and hit the counter. The kitchen went silent. Philip didn't move. He stood there with his head turned to the right. Coffee dripping off his hand. The red mark on his cheek forming in real time. He turned his head back slowly. He looked at me. Not shocked. Not angry. Something else. Something I'd never seen on his face in 22 years of marriage. Recognition. Like he was seeing me clearly for the first time. Like a lens had shifted and everything was in focus and what he saw wasn't new. It was just finally visible. He set the mug down. He wiped his hand on the dish towel. He said, "Okay." One word the same way our son says fine. The same way quiet people close a door. Not with force. With finality. He walked out of the kitchen. I heard him go to the bedroom. I heard the door close. Not a slam. A click. I stood in the kitchen with my hands still raised halfway in the shape of my own violence ringing in the air. I hit my husband. Because he told me the truth about my son. Because he named the thing I'd been running from for 20 years. Because he said out loud what the essay said silently. What the distance said silently. What the three-state college said silently. I hit the only person who ever tried to help me see it. He came out of the bedroom 20 minutes later. Changed clothes. Car keys. He said, "I'm going to my brother's." He left. He came back the next night. Late. I was in bed. He slept in the guest room. Didn't explain. Didn't argue. Didn't reference what happened. The next morning. Kitchen. He made coffee. I said, "Philip. Can we talk?" He said, "Good morning." Poured his coffee. Went to the garage. Started working on something. I heard a saw. Then a drill. Then silence. That was the last real thing he said to me for 3 days. Good morning. The talking came back eventually. Logistics. Surface. Schedule. He'd say, "I'm going to the store. Need anything?" He'd say, "Dinner is at 6. He'd say, "The lawn guy is coming Thursday." He'd say, "Good night." Good night. Not "I love you." Not "sleep well." Not the kiss on the forehead that had been part of our routine for 2 decades. Just good night. 2 words. Same tone as good morning. Same distance. Same bus stranger energy. I tried to break through. I cooked his favorite meal. He said, "This is good. Thanks." I bought him a book he'd mentioned. He said, "Thanks. I'll read it." I tried to hold his hand on the couch. He didn't pull away. But he didn't hold back. His hand just sat there. Like a piece of furniture. Week 3. I said, "Philip. I'm sorry. For hitting you." He looked at me. He said, "I heard you." I said, "Can we move past this?" He said, "I'm not sure what moving past it looks like." I said, "It looks like us. Like before." He said, "Before was me not saying the thing and you not hearing it. Is that what you want to go back to?" I said, "I want to go back to when you loved me." He said, "I didn't stop loving you, Vivian. I stopped performing it. There's a difference." That sentence. I stopped performing it. Meaning every "I love you." Every kiss. Every hand on my shoulder. It was real, but it was also a performance. A choice he made every day to show love to a woman who hit him when he tried to help her. A woman who hadn't shown the same love to her own son. And now the performance was over. Not the love. The performance. The effort of making love visible when the person receiving it didn't earn it. Month 2. Theo called. Philip put it on speaker at dinner. They talked for 40 minutes. School. A project. Sarah. A professor Theo liked. Philip laughed. Asked questions. Engaged. Theo said, "Tell Mom I said hi." Philip looked at me. He said, "She's right here. You can tell her yourself." Theo paused. He said, "Hey Mom." I said, "Hey sweetheart. How are you?" He said, "Good." He was quiet for about 4 seconds. Then he said, "Well, I gotta go. Talk to you later, Dad." Talk to you later, Dad. Not parents. Not you guys. Dad. I was in the room and he still directed his goodbye to his father. Philip hung up. He didn't comment on it. He didn't need to. The silence said everything. Month 4. Philip started spending weekends at his workshop. He builds furniture. Always has. It was a hobby. Now it was becoming a lifestyle. He'd leave at 7 a.m. Saturday. Come back at 6 p.m. Sunday same thing. I spent weekends alone in a house that used to feel full. I said, "You're spending a lot of time at the shop." He said, "I'm building a bookshelf. For Theo's apartment." A bookshelf. For the son who loved books. For the son whose reading trophy I walked away from. Philip was building furniture for Theo's future while I sat in the house wondering why the present felt empty. Month 5. I went to therapy. First session, the therapist asked what brought me in. I said, "My husband is withdrawing from me." She said, "Why do you think that is?" I said, "I hit him." She said, "Tell me more." I told her. Everything. The hit. The essay. The play. The trophy. The book I never read. The 3-state college. All of it. She said, "Vivian. You've described 20 years of emotional distance from your son and you're in my office because your husband is withdrawing from you. Not because your son already did." I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Your son withdrew from you years ago. Gradually. Completely. He moved 900 miles away. He doesn't initiate contact. He writes about his father as if you don't exist. That withdrawal happened slowly enough that you adapted to it. You accepted it. You filed it under normal. But when your husband started withdrawing the same way, you panicked. Because Philip's love was the one you counted on. Philip's love was the one that made you feel like a good person. Like a good wife. Like a good mother. And now that mirror is gone and you're looking at yourself without it. I sat with that for a week. She said, the hit is serious. We need to address it. But the hit isn't the disease. It's a symptom. You hit Philip because he named the truth you've been hiding from for 20 years. That your son doesn't feel loved by you. And instead of sitting with that pain and doing the work of understanding why you converted it to rage and directed it at the one person trying to help you. That's what we need to work on. Not the marriage. You. The person inside the marriage. Month 6. Philip told me he'd been talking to Theo about what happened. I said, you told him I hit you. He said, no. I told him we're going through a rough patch. He figured out the rest. I said, how? He said, because Theo is perceptive. He always has been. He asked me if it had to do with him. I said partly. He asked if you were okay. I said I hope so. He asked if I was okay. My son. The one I couldn't sit on a floor for. The one I walked away from. The one whose essay erased me. He asked his father if I was okay. I said, he asked about me. Philip said, he always asks about you, Vivian. Every call. Is mom okay? Is mom eating? Is mom sleeping? He asks about you every single time. He's been asking about you since he left for college. The difference isn't that he doesn't care. The difference is he doesn't know how to show it to you because you never showed him how. I broke. Finally. Not the defensive breaking. The real kind. The kind where you stop protecting yourself from the truth and let it come in. He doesn't know how to show it because I never showed him how. I taught my son that love looks like efficiency. Schedules. Good job while walking away. One finger in the air while finishing a phone call. I taught him that a mother's attention is something you compete for. Something you have to earn. Something that comes with conditions and timing and availability. And he learned. He learned so well that at 20 years old the best he can do is, tell mom I said hi. Month 7. I wrote Theo a letter. Not a text. Handwritten. I told him I was sorry for the play. For the trophy. For the book. For every time I said you're fine when he wasn't. For every time I chose my phone over his face. For every time I stood in the doorway instead of sitting on the floor. I said, I don't know when I became this person. Or maybe I always was this person and you saw it before I did. But I'm trying now. Late. Badly. Imperfectly. But trying. He didn't respond for 2 weeks. Then a text. Short. He said, I got the letter. Thank you for writing it. That means something. That means something. Not I forgive you. Not let's talk. Not I love you, mom. That means something. From a 20-year-old who taught himself to ask for nothing from his mother because nothing is what he expected. Month 8. Now. Philip and I are still in the house. Same kitchen. Same coffee maker. Same good morning. He hasn't asked for a divorce. He hasn't mentioned separation. He hasn't packed a bag. He's just less. Every day. A little less present. A little less warm. A little less there. He still cooks 3 nights a week. He still mows the lawn. He still says good night. But the space between his words and his meaning gets wider every day. He's in the house but he's not in the marriage. He's fulfilling a contract. Not living a life. I asked him last week. I said, Philip, do you still love me? He was sanding a piece of wood in the garage. He didn't stop sanding. He said, I love who you could be. I'm waiting to see if she shows up. I love who you could be. Not who you are. Not who you were. Who you could be. He's married to a possibility. A version of me that might exist if I do the work. And he's willing to wait. But he's not willing to pretend. The bookshelf is finished. It's beautiful. Oak. Hand-carved details on the sides. He's driving it to Theo's apartment next month. A 14-hour drive. One way. To deliver a bookshelf he built with his hands for a son who loves books because his father sat on the floor and read with him. I asked if I could come. Philip paused. He said, I think Theo would like it if you came. But Vivian. If you come you have to be present. Really present. Not the version of present where you check your phone and say that's great and stand in the doorway. You have to sit on the floor. Literally or not. You have to sit on the floor. I said, I'll sit on the floor. He said, we'll see. We'll see. From a man who used to say I love you every morning. From a man whose forehead kiss was as reliable as sunrise. We'll see. Conditional. Cautious. The way you treat someone who has hurt you and hasn't fully proven they've stopped. I hit my husband. I neglected my son. I spent 20 years standing in doorways instead of walking through them. I chose efficiency over empathy. Schedules over softness. My phone over my child's face. And when the one person who loved me enough to tell me the truth finally said it out loud, I answered him with violence. Philip builds things that hold weight. Bridges. Foundations. Retaining walls. He's been the retaining wall of this family for 22 years. Holding everything in place. Quietly. Without asking for recognition. I cracked that wall. With an open hand. In our kitchen. Over a truth I should have heard 10 years ago. He's still here. Still in the house. Still making coffee. Still saying good morning. But the wall has a fracture now. And I'm the one who put it there. I don't know if Philip will stay. I don't know if Theo will ever call me the way he calls his father. I don't know if the letter I wrote matters or if it's too late or if 20 years of doorways can be undone by one woman finally willing to sit on the floor. I know this. My son wrote 800 words about the person who shaped him. And I wasn't in them. That's not his failure. That's my confession. And the man who was in those 800 words. The man who sat on floors and talked in low voices and read books in 3 days and built a bookshelf with his hands. That man said good morning to me yesterday. Just good morning. And I deserved exactly that much.